Hello once again, namaste all. It's very interesting to know how we learn different skills, like learning different languages, skills, we have our own hobbies. So, how do we learn this? Right from childhood, we learn a lot of languages, we keep developing them, we go deeper and deeper, we learn different rules in grammar, in verbal learning. So, how does all this happen? So today's video is about verbal learning and skill learning under the chapter of learning. So verbal learning is something that is unique to human beings, and it is not conditioning, it is learning, it is relatively permanent. So we acquire knowledge about objects and events mainly through speaking or reading about them or listening to someone, which is done through language or through words. And we usually make associations. So psychologists wanted to study how humans learn languages or how verbal learning happens in humans, and they used a variety of materials like nonsense syllabus, which are three-letter words, CBC words, that is consonant, vowel, consonant words, familiar words, unfamiliar words, sentences, and paragraphs. They used different methods of studying verbal learning. One is the paired associates learning. It is like the SS and SR conditioning. And here to learn, we usually use this to learn foreign language equivalents of our mother tongue words. So first, a list of paired associates is prepared. So the first word in the pair is the stimulus word and the second word is the response word. So both the words can be in the same language, or if you want to learn a new language, it can be one of the words will be in your mother tongue, the other will be in the new language. The first word or the stimulus word is a nonsense syllable. The second or the response word are English nouns. So the learners or the participants are first shown the pairs and they are asked to remember and recall the response word or term after the presentation of the stimulus word. This is when the learning trial begins, and one by one, the stimulus words are presented and the participants are asked to give the response term. In case of failure, we show the response term to the participant and trial continues till all the response terms are given without a single error. So this total number of trials taken by a particular participant shows the measure of paired associates learning that happens for that participant. Similarly, we have serial learning and free recall. I will explain this in detail in class, but basically serial learning is about how participants are asked to reproduce the items in the list in the same order or the same sequence. And the item, for example, the first item is the stimulus for the recall of the second item, and so on. The free recall method, the list of words are shown and the participants are asked to recall in any order. And it's observed by the researchers that items at the beginning or at the end of lists are recalled more often by the participants in the free recall method. There are a lot of factors which determine verbal learning. One is the length of the list. They say that the longer lists take more time, and if the words are meaningful, they are remembered better. And if we have a lot of association with the words that we are learning in the list, then there is more recall, better recall, and better learning. And there is something called the total time principle. It is a fixed amount of time needed to learn a fixed amount of material, regardless of how many trials we take. And it was also observed that more time taken to learn leads to stronger learning, better retention also. It was observed by the researchers that when the participants are not restricted to serial learning and they're allowed free recall of the words in the lists, verbal learning becomes organizational. What does that mean? The participants can now recall words in their own order, a new order or sequence. So Bousfield was the first person to conduct the experiment uh, to check this kind of learning that happens, that is category clustering. He gave a list of 60 words, and these words belonged to um, semantic categories, 4 semantic categories, 15 words in each category, and there were 4 categories: names, animals, professions, and vegetables. And they were given in random order. So when they were given in random order and asked to recall freely, they saw that the participants, surprisingly, were able to recall words of each category together, even though the categories were mixed up. So this is known as category clustering, and it was worth noting that words presented randomly, participants organized them category-wise in free recall. This is because of the nature of the list. It had categories. But they said that free recall always organized subjectively shows that participants organize words in their own ways and they recall according to their own individual ways. So this brought about an inference that verbal learning is both intentional and incidental. Usually verbal learning is intentional. We want to learn new words, new vocabulary, and that's how we make an effort to learn. So it is usually intentional. But through this experiment, they realized that learners can notice features like rhyming of words or some words in the list which start with identical letters and so on. And that's how they recall according to their own categories. And that's how they concluded that verbal learning is both intentional and incidental. Next, we come to skill learning. So skills are something which show the ability of a person to perform complex tasks in a very smooth and efficient way. It could be car driving, piloting an aircraft, navigating a ship, or reading and writing skills. And these are learned basically through practice and exercise, and they consist of eye-hand coordination and stimulus response learning. So Fitz was the first person who studied skill learning, and he said it happens in 3 phases. The first is a cognitive phase. Here we focus on understanding instructions and memorizing how the task needs to be performed. For example, car driving. The first time when we learn how to drive a car, we usually do it on um, early in the morning or late at night when there is no traffic on the road or on a big playground, right? So that we can focus on the instructions. But as we practice, we get into the next phase, the associative phase. Here, stimuli are linked with appropriate responses. Our errors will decrease, our performance improves, and the distance, the time taken to cover a particular distance will be shorter. So we make less mistakes. We don't come to a halt with a jerk, and the engine doesn't go off often, and so on. So then we move to the third phase, the autonomous phase. So as we practice more and more, we don't get distracted with the stimuli outside, and performance becomes automatic with minimal conscious effort. So we don't have to put in that much effort in our driving or cycling, whatever. We do listen to music while driving or talk to our co-passengers because it has become automatic. So this shows the development of skills in 3 different stages. And they say there's a performance plateau between stages. So with each successive attempt, performance becomes smoother and less effort demanding. And when there is a performance plateau between phases, our performance comes to a standstill for some time. But as the next phase continues, we show improvement. So this shows that practice makes us perfect. And this is how we learn skills. So with this, we come to the end of the topic verbal learning and skill learning. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.